very curious about your experience here because I'm working through something.
Absolute nightmare.
Okay.
Absolute nightmare.
Okay.
Like that, honestly, like 90% of my life this far has been about avoiding traditional employment because it's just, it's the least conducive thing to being a person like me. I think luckily when I was a teenager, I watched my mom just be absolutely unemployable. And I think even if I fully didn't understand it at the time, I think by the time I was 17, I was like, even trying to do that a traditional way, I know it's going to end in disaster because I know whatever she's like, I'm like this.
Interesting.
And so I think I knew, and I'd already at that time tried to have like part-time jobs, and I did stick at them for extended periods of time, but they always wrecked me. I was always like so burnt out. I would make lots of bad decisions, self-medicating with all kinds of stuff. And that's pretty much how every long bout of employment went for me because I was just absolutely shot and, not doing a great job. Like every job I ever had, like whether it was at the movie theater or Subway or whatever, I was losing money, getting in trouble, like just unable to cope, feeling absolutely wrecked at the end of every single shift, dreading going in, everything about it. And, the thing that sucks, even as I'm saying that, it sounds like, oh, you're just a bad person.
Yes. Yes.
And the truth is, like, that's why I really love the concept of neurodivergence because it kind of emphasizes that this isn't necessarily a problem as much as it is a maladaptive way of being in our current society.
For sure.
Because there are plenty of other scenarios throughout history where being the type of person that we are was really adaptive. And that's the theory is that is why it evolved that way. If you're a hunter, being, hyper vigilant, noticing everything, that's going to be really useful to you. Yep. Not going to be useful when you just got to be an assembly line sandwich maker for 8 hours. No, that's like, you need to focus on the meats. That's it. Don't, I got in trouble there for getting too creative with the sauces. I was like trying to like almost sign my signature because they told me I was a sandwich artist. I was like trying to bring a little flavor and they're like, 3 lines, Andy, 3 lines. And I'm like, okay, all right. So yeah. So I always, that was kind of, and actually that's why I make my podcast, Creative Pep Talk, is because, and that's why it's creative career. I think of it like two thirds creative, 1/3 career. And so, but I always, and I always have a problem with that in a way, with the career aspect of it. Cause I am a creative at heart. I hate numbers. But the career aspect isn't necessarily because I'm like a business bro. It's because I care about creative people.
For sure.
And this is where the society we find ourselves in, and finding and crafting your own path is going to require you to be not just okay at business, but kind of great at it. And so yeah, that's where my passion comes from, is just knowing that the traditional route is not really great for a lot of people.
That's perfect, because that's also been my experience. Even because I was an engineer first, so I was working in like factories, and it was just so rigid, and I just did not. I felt it every day. I would go in, I was miserable. There was a lot of chaos in factories, so that my mind liked that, but just the monotonous stuff. They're like, well, you need to make a newsletter every month talking about what we're doing here, and I'm like, we're not doing anything. Like, I can't do this.
What? How about I just make one newsletter and we just send that one out every time because it's a factory. Yes. So the same thing that happened this month happened last month. So there you go.
So I with my brain, I just get to the point where I'm like, I found a little hole for myself where I'd be like, give it 2 weeks, it'll disappear. So there's a lot of stuff I just wasn't doing because I'm like, I just can't bring myself to do that. And so now being a graphic designer and like I worked in an agency for a little bit, and that still did not do it. I was getting in trouble for stuff that like I felt like wasn't my fault. It just was. There was moments where I could shine, but there was other moments where it was very difficult. So it's just been one of those things where I'm like, am I really employable? Like, am I going to be able to work for anybody other than myself? And at this moment, I'm just exploring freelancing and doing work for myself. And it does scratch the itch. But like I said, there's other things you got to figure out, which I'm okay exploring those things on my own. But exploring those things under something where it feels like I have to give you more of my energy than you care to give me yours. And it just doesn't feel like a fair deal. So, it's tough right now. I really feel for my other like buddies with jobs. Like I really do. I don't know. It's just a tough time. It feels like for jobs. Something I've been telling people is like, I really just wish we could be more creative in our approach to jobs and how we deal with people within them. Cause I feel like the biggest flaw is how we manage people. We don't manage people as people. And that's a lot of the problem. And then we're just kind of exploiting people. And of course, as we talk more about consent, and I'm talking consent to my son and stuff like that. Should people be doing things they don't 100% want to do? No. And that's, you know what I'm saying? So I don't know. There's a bigger conversation here. And that's why I kind of wanted to ask you how you felt about it.
Yeah. I mean, it totally makes sense. And in that vein, something that's really interesting is Cal Newport has a book, Slow Productivity. He was on my show recently talking about it. And that book's really great for people who run their own thing.
Oh, nice.
But
Okay.
I think it's even better for people that manage other knowledge workers, which I would count creative people, designers in that sector. And the whole book is kind of about how our concepts of productivity all came from like agriculture and then agriculture to factory work. And then like knowledge workers or office workers and office managers adapted all of those concepts to knowledge work. And yet they're completely incompatible with the way that we work with our brains.
Yep.
And so everything we know about how a brain works, how a brain computes great output, these types of productivity actually are working against you getting those results.
Interesting.
And so I love that book. I love Cal Newport's work anyway, but I'm hoping that book doesn't come across just as a critique to managers, but would inspire them to try things differently because, especially, I mean, and also like, look, I get that there are lots of things that we have to do that we don't want to do. And I think there have been short seasons of that where I've been able to do it, even if it really did wreck me mentally and physically. And I get that we live in that kind of world, but also my hope, like yours, is that we would all find ways to express our strengths.
For sure.
In a way that feels great. But yeah, that book's really powerful, kind of rumination on those ideas.
I've been seeing it floating around, but I'm definitely gonna have to check it out.
It's great. Audiobook is really great.
Nice. Okay. So it's just this whole conversation, I feel like we're coming to, like, especially in the creative community, it's just kind of coming to a head of like we need to talk about these practices and like how this actually needs to work. So I'm excited I feel like as podcasters, we have the opportunity to have those conversations, which is really cool.